Hey, today is National Techie Day. Yes, National Techie Day. So if you have friends who are very technically savvy, celebrate that fact. I know I have spent many times being kind of technical support for people who are hundreds, if not thousands of miles away at times. So hey, you know what? I appreciate people turning to me when they need help computer wise, things like that, even if sometimes I may not know the answer. So, happy Techie Day, and the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer. I'm back once again as your host here at the Daily Dope. Today is Wednesday, October 3rd. I like to look at Wargames on Wednesdays. The game I'm reviewing today isn't really a war game, but it is sort of conflict related. It is a historical game. Yes, I will be reviewing Fort Sumter, the Secession Crisis 1860 to 1861, designed by Mark Herman and released through GMT Games, my good friends over at GMT. So that is on the horizon. So let's get started off. If you have not watched this show before, this is a live stream, very casual. I just mainly talk about tabletop games, sometimes some geek culture stuff, and very, very relaxed. So this is a live stream. If you are watching on YouTube, feel free to chime in if you have a question or just want to say hello, or maybe you want to see something a little closer about Fort Sumter while I'm doing my review. By all means, feel free to chime in. There is no chat on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of these stranger commenters at bay, but I do keep an eye on chat. So if you ask a question, I will respond, or if you just chime in, I will certainly respond. Before I jump into the news today, I do want to thank a few people out there who actually emailed me late last night or early this morning saying, hey, sorry about your Cubs yesterday. It's okay. I mean, granted, I was frustrated during the game, but it did not come as any shock to me. And I have been a Cubs fan since about 1978, 77-ish. So I'm used to getting let down. So, but hey, you know, gotta admit, with all the injuries that they had, some free agent signings that didn't go too well, which one of them was injury related as well, to win 95 games and actually have the second best record in the National League, not too shabby. Although I'm really hoping that they can their hitting coach, because their offense just was not clicking this year at all. 22nd in the league in home runs, and you play at Wrigley Field? Not good. All right, so anyway, let's jump into some news. I've got a few news pieces today. And first off, Greater Than Games and Zephyr Workshop are teaming to release Aegis, combining robot strategy game this month, and I've got the dope. Build your team, combine your robots, and fight to victory. Aegis is a fast and furious tactics game in which players command a team of 5 combining robots. Using synergy and tactics, destroy your opponent's robots, perform attacks, and unite their bodies together into immensely powerful forms to claim victory. This is a perfect game for wargame newcomers and veterans alike. The world of Sagaya, I think maybe that's how it's being pronounced, is caught in a giant robot war. It's up to you to command your robots to victory. Build your 5 robot team from 5 different robot classes: Assault, Evasive, Guard, Intel, and Support. Fight head-to-head in less than 30 minutes. Move tactically as your robots share energy with each other. It includes intuitive combat, which uses single-digit numbers and 6-sided dice. You'll combine your bots together during combat into more powerful forms. There are endless possibilities as you fight with over 100 unique robots across 6 game modes, including drafting and objective control modes. Aegis is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up. It will play in I should say, did I say 224? It should be 2 or 4. Ages 14 and up, and plays in 25 or 60 minutes. It will carry an MSRP of $49.99 when it arrives later this month. So Aegis is something that's been on my radar for a few years because I spoke with the designer. If I remember correctly, I want to say the designer's name is Jesse, and I actually interviewed him, it was about 3 years ago at Gen Con. Yeah, about 3 years ago, I think it was. I don't think it was 4 years ago. And Aegis was kind of kicking around as far as maybe being released by Greenbrier Games. I have never played this. I have not seen this close up. The only time I actually really saw it was when it was more like kind of prototypical. And my understanding is that Greenbrier wanted some changes made to the design. The designer didn't want to make those changes, and it looks like it was shopped over to Greater Than Games. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just letting you know the game is coming out. I have no idea what it plays like. I just understand that when it was going to be through Greenbrier, I think they wanted just a little more added to the game. Because it was kind of along the lines of, well, yeah, okay, so you combine these robots and that. What else? So I don't know. I have no idea. Looks interesting. Just thought I would share the news. Just like there's another interesting looking game that's on the horizon. And it looks like it'll be a quick playing family sort of game. Looks kind of fun. It's available right now, I believe, from 524 Labs. And I've got the dope on Mint Delivery. Mint Delivery is a mint tin-sized pick-up and deliver board game designed to be quick to play and easy to learn. In the game, players take the role of a mint delivery truck driver. Big Mentos sign on the side. Just driving along. Big Altoids truck. Driving around the area, taking orders for mints and delivering them. Each player has 2 actions on their turn, such as moving, loading their truck, and upgrading the mints that they're carrying. Once enough orders have been fulfilled, the game ends. Whoever has fulfilled the highest value of orders will be deemed the employee of the month and win. Mint Delivery is for 1 to 5 players. Ages 14 and up, and I'm taking a wild stab. This is ages 14 and up because of the little components, looks like little tokens there. Doesn't sound like this is a game where you're gonna need to be 14 to wrap your head around the rules. The game does play in about 10 to 25 minutes and will carry an MSRP of $13.99 when it releases later in Q4. So I have to point out, I've run across some conflicting info here. I've seen the game is available now at the 524 Labs website. That's why I'm actually sharing that web address. And it's supposed to be available for $12.99. But I have also heard through distributors out there that it is coming out later this year from Mr. B Games, although there is no mention of it on the Mr. B Games website. And it will carry an MSRP of $13.99. Regardless, sounds like a kind of an interesting little game. Fits in a little, mint tin. Put it in your pocket. Bring it with you, and you and your friends can become mint delivery drivers. If you're a fan of the Android setting from Fantasy Flight Games, then you should be happy, I should say, to know there's a new source book which is arriving soon for the Genesis generic role-playing game system. And I've got the dope. In the not so distant future, isn't that kind of how Mystery Science Theater opened up? And then, oh no, that's the not too distant future. Anyway, in the not so distant future, humanity has spread across the solar system, unlocked the frontiers of cyberspace, and created millions of intelligent androids in its own image. At the heart of this progress stands a ladder leading to the riches of the stars, the massive space elevator called the Beanstalk. and at its base sprawls the biggest, meanest, and most exciting city on Earth, New Angeles. Fantasy Flight Games is proud to announce Shadow of the Beanstalk, an Android sourcebook for the Genesis role-playing system. Enter a cyberpunk future and take on the roles of cops, con artists, roughnecks, and escaped androids trapped between greedy corporations, corrupt officials, and vicious street gangs. Outwit your foes, uncover their conspiracies, flee their retribution, and maybe you'll survive. Who knows? Maybe you'll even get rich. I doubt it. Shadow of the Beanstalk is a 256-page sourcebook for use with the Genesis role-playing system. In this book, you'll find new rules for character creation, new weapons, equipment, and adversaries, new rules for running the net, a guide to New Angeles, and advice for game masters running a campaign in the cyberpunk future of Android. Even better, all this comes accompanied by beautiful art and elegant mechanics that can be used in any science fiction setting for the Genesis role-playing system. Shadow of the Beanstalk starts by redefining character creation in the Genesis system, giving it an unforgettable neo-noir tinge. In the first part of the book, you'll be introduced to new rules, as well as unique talents and skills to tailor your character to the Android setting. In the second part of the book, the focus shifts to fleshing out the Android setting, including complete rules for running the net. In the future, the successor to the internet helps define every aspect of daily life. But kind of the web does that now. Linking the world to a web of data. Manipulating this network opens up great benefits, and Shadow of the Beanstalk can guide you on exactly how to do that. The final section of the book, the Game Master is going to provide a wealth of information and resources for your games, such as a list of adversaries appropriate to the setting. As a nexus of trade, culture, and politics, New Angeles draws all sorts of people from all over the world. From principled runners to megacorp executives, over 70 adversaries are statted for your use in campaigns. This 256-page hardcover is going to be available for pre-order. Actually, I should say that Shadow of the Beanstalk is available right now for pre-order, just started today, and is expected to release toward the end of the year. It does carry an MSRP of $49.95. So at least folks do know that Fantasy Flight Games isn't just tossing Android away. Of course, they had the board game Android, which my best friend Elliot Miller just loves that game. I never played it because simply it takes a long time, I believe, to set up. It's right there kind of in the Arkham Horror, well, at least the original Arkham Horror. No, I should say original. Original was Chaosium. I should say original Fantasy Flight Games edition of Arkham Horror. It was took a lot of time to set up. We were going to play it one time, and I finally said to Elliot, I said, dude, I said, how long do you think it's, how much more time? And he's like, yeah, about 30, 40 minutes. And I was like, dude, let's just play something else. But he swears up and down, it's a great game. Plus, people out there really enjoyed Android Netrunner, so you've got that too. So cool to see that Fantasy Flight Games isn't just, washing their hands of Android. Not that I thought they would, but and normally I think Fantasy Flight Games has been releasing some of their Genesis. They have released some of their Genesis releases on Drive-Thru RPG and PDF, but it's usually quite a while afterwards. I think Genesis was out maybe a month and a half before they actually went to release PDFs. Speaking of PDFs, it's October, so that means plenty of gamers are going to start looking towards scarier fare than usual. I know I am. To bring to their gaming table, and Bundle of Holding has announced their first foray into horror for the month. I've got the dope. Attention Trooper, Weird War 1 is the latest Savage Worlds battleground in Pinnacle Entertainment's Weird War series of tabletop role-playing campaign settings. In this Weird War 1 bundle, the first offer in this year's October Horrors sequence of horror RPGs, The intrepid soldiers, sailors, airmen, and civilians of 1914 to 1918 must struggle against ancient evils unleashed in the Great War to end all wars. That's not how it was referred. It was the Great War or the War to End All Wars. It's not the Great War to End All Wars. I don't recall ever hearing that. Hey, by the way, this year was actually the centennial of the armistice, which ended World War I. I would hope most people knew that. Anyway, this all-new offer brings you almost the entire line of Savage World sourcebooks and supplements funded in Pinnacle's successful February 2016 Weird War I Kickstarter campaign, and these are DRM-free PDFs. For just $9.95, you get all 8 titles in this offer's starter collection, which carries a retail value of $45, including the Weird War I Player's Guide and War Master's Handbook, plus the free Savage Worlds Test Drive rules, 5 collections of Weird War I archetypes, pre-generated characters, and the print and fold Horrors of Weird War I figure flats character stand-ups, or as I like to call them, standees. If you pay more than this offer's threshold price of $19.97, you'll level up and also get this offer's entire bonus collection with 10 more titles worth an additional $47, including 5 Weird War I adventures, Raid on Fort Doramont, the 13th Warrior, Hellfighters in Vino Veritas, I almost said Vertatis, it's Veritas, duh, and No Man's Land. For combat maps, a bridge, no man's land, trenches, and a village, and the War Master screen inserts of useful reference charts for Pinnacle's customizable Game Master screen. Do want to mention fans of Weird Wars should also check out an all-new companion offer. It's the Weird War 2 bundle with the Savage Worlds and D20 system titles in Pinnacle's World War II setting. Actually, it's their Weird War II setting. Do want to point out 10% of each payment for these 2 Weird Wars offers after gateway fees will go to the charity chosen by Pinnacle Entertainment, and this time out it is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That is an excellent charity to support. So, got to point out, these are I'm showing Weird War 1 because that is the newer of the series that had come out, settings that had come out for Savage Worlds. Do want to point out these are from Pinnacle. These were not from a third-party company. So, and I'm not knocking any of the third-party companies out there who do Savage World stuff because they do some cool stuff. But Pinnacle tends to really go all out with their setting books and their adventures and things like that. So, pretty cool. I gotta admit, I mean, you can basically get the starter pack for less than it costs you for the PDF of either the player's guide. I almost said player's handbook, or the what's the other, War Master's guide. So that's pretty cool. Pretty nice. So I know tomorrow's RPGs, but did want to share that today because I've got other stuff cooking as well. Do want to point out that there were some news pieces, and they were actually Kickstarter related, and I thought, hey, you know what? Those look really cool. I'd like to, try to share the info. And I have to say, there's a disturbing trend right now with companies going out on Kickstarter, and all their information is set in images. So what they do is they put up all these images in their Kickstarter project. There's no actual text for anybody who wants to share that news with anybody. There's no way to pull that text off. So I have noticed that, strangely enough, more and more companies are doing that, and they might think, hey, you know what? This looks pretty cool. And I mean, I admit, yeah, it does look nice. But the thing is, it's actually hurting them. Because nobody can actually share that. What are you going to do? Share a bunch of images that all have, different text and a couple of, couple of photos and that on them. No, not gonna happen. So, and the other problem is that now on Kickstarter, it used to be you could actually get the link to the video if the company had a video, a Kickstarter video. Can't do that anymore. That stopped a few months back, if I remember right. Now, I'm a techie, so I know how to get my hands a lot of times on the video. Not always, especially if they don't even have that video on YouTube, on a YouTube channel for that company. Sometimes it's tough to pull that. And I gotta say, there are cool looking Kickstarters I don't share news about because A, I can't get a video, and B, more importantly, I can't pull any info. I'm not gonna sit here and create slides that go past and people are supposed to try to read it. Am I supposed to read it off a teleprompter, right? So anyway, just wanted to mention that there were a couple of things. I did actually reach out to the folks at both those companies to see if they had press releases. They had any press info, and one of them got back to me and they said, "Yeah, I'll see if I can get the guys to throw something together." So pretty strange if they didn't have a press release that they could have been sending out. Hey, John P's checking in. Yes, that's disturbing. Kills the ability to find in page and use other browser functions. Yep, that's right. So I actually tweeted that today, and I said, hey, there are a lot of companies out there that are missing out. People sharing stuff about their Kickstarters because they're putting all their information in an image or in a series of images that load as you're going down the page. So it's kind of like, all right, I know the companies think that looks cool, which it does look pretty good, but it's actually hurting them as far as people spreading the word. All right, so before I get into my review of Fort Sumter, the Secession Crisis, 1860 to 1861, let's talk about what's coming up on the show. So on tomorrow's show, it's Thursday. I love talking RPGs. I do have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I have pointed that out before. Show might be late or the show might not have news. So all depends on when I get back from my cardiologist's appointment. So fingers crossed on that one. I think it's just a follow-up because I just went and saw her a month ago. So I don't think there's anything really crucial going on. Although my doctor's appointment yesterday actually was a lot longer than I was expecting because I got some shots and then they went and did some blood work, which I wasn't planning on. So anyway, tomorrow I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I've been kind of banging around, and it's an RPG system or series of games that I know lots of people out there are probably really, really familiar with. I am just starting to kind of dip my toes into the powered by the apocalypse sorts of games, and really kind of want to run a fantasy role-playing game with my nephew and some of his friends. But I think I'll probably talk a little more about this in detail tomorrow, but I ran kind of a very kind of basic Call of Cthulhu adventure with my nephew, and it was terrible. Not from my end, more like, seriously, can't come up with any ideas? Where's your imagination, guy? Like, we play all these different board games and stuff like that. He plays video games all the time. It's like, what's going on? So, trying to go as like super rules light and kind of throw it out there where we're kind of all creating this world. So I'll talk a little bit about that on tomorrow's show, but I am also going to review Tales from the Loop, Our Friends the Machines, and Other Mysteries. This is the supplement for the award-winning Tales from the Loop from Free League. So I will be reviewing that. I never did like a first look at this, so we'll actually page through. Probably want to mention that if you're a player, you may not want to watch that tomorrow. All right, then on Friday's show, I will be reviewing and kind of showing you how to play Barbarian Battlegrounds from my friends over at Greenbrier Games. And it's funny. The art makes you, I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit. The art makes you think that it's kind of, it's a cute little game with these little, a lot of smackdown, a lot of delivering the smackdown. Then on Monday's show, I am going to review and kind of show you how to play. It's kind of in depth. So, Archmage from the fine folks over at Starling Games. And I will give you a hint. So far, I have played 3 Starling games, and I have vastly enjoyed all 3. So that includes Everdell, which I think is a blast. Everybody I've introduced to Everdell loves it. And then also Black Orchestra, which is where you're plotting to kill Hitler, and it's historical. Everybody really loved that. And I mentioned, last time I played, it was just last week. My nephew Cameron and I did it. We were able to, the Fuhrer, derailed that train. All right, so I know a lot of people are tuning in because they want to see my review of Fort Sumter, the Secession Crisis, 1860 to 1861 from GMT Games. It is designed by the legend himself, Mark Herman, with art provided by Newt Grunitz. I have no idea if I'm even close with that pronunciation. And of course, the man himself, Mr. GMT, Roger P. McGowan. The game is for 2 players. It's for ages 10 and up. Plays in about 20 to 40 minutes. 40 minutes is actually, even like if it's the first time you're playing, that's pretty much right on the money. Most of the time you're going to finish in about 30 minutes or less. This does carry an MSRP of $42. It is available now. You can get it from GMT. I do know there are some online retailers out there that do have it. And I got to be honest, for about $30. So just pointing that out. I know I'll get all the hate from, hey, how come you're talking about online retailers? It's my friendly local game store. It's like, if that savings is that important to you, I just point that out, right? I'm not trying to take money out of anybody's pocket. I'm not taking it out of GMT's, right? GMT, you buy it through them, or you can buy it through an online retailer. They're still making money. Maybe not the same amount, but all right. So I've got this set up. I'm going to throw my reading specs on. So in essence, what Fort Sumter, the Secession Crisis, 1860 to 1861 is, it is a card-driven game. Folks are very, very familiar with many of Mark Herman's card-driven games, such as Empire of the Sun. I would say that's probably the meatiest, the most complex out of his card-driven games. Then we've got For the People, which is the American Civil War. We've got Washington's War, of course, which is the Revolutionary War here in America. I gotta admit, I only played For the People once. I have, of course, obviously played Washington's War quite a few times. I seem to think, if I recall, Washington's War, to me at least, I felt was a little easier to get into than, say, For the People. And obviously enough, it's going to be much easier for people to get into as opposed to Empire of the Sun. Now, but not to dissuade anybody. I mean, I have yet to have a chance to play Empire of the Sun, and it looks awesome. It's the Pacific War during World War II. It looks phenomenal. So, anyway, so this is Fort Sumter, the Secession Crisis. I'm just going to call it Fort Sumter from here on out. And what this game is, it is a card-driven game where it's rather abstract, and it is the crisis leading up to the Civil War, in effect. It's leading up to the first shots being fired on Fort Sumter. So what you'll be doing is you'll have this board in front of you. It's kind of a map. It's got all the information about the game. It's got all these political influence counters out here, political capital counters, I should say. In the 2 colors, you got the blue, you got the gray. You've got, we're going to actually kind of tour the board here. So first off, on each side, so this is the secessionist side, that's the Union side. Normally, you're going to have where we have like the Final Crisis cards, token pool, hidden objective. You're going to have cards or these political capital counters, tokens. You'll have these down here, right? But because I wanted to at least give you kind of a closer look at the game board, I don't have it way zoomed out because I figured all we got to do is just kind of, I can kind of show you, yeah, the cards are down here, right? Because as always, space is at a premium down here in the Duct Tape Studios. So I know a lot of people, they're going to watch this video and they're going to sit there and go, wow, geez, Jeff, you've actually talked about the game, set up the game, talked about the map, all this other stuff, and it's taking you longer to do that than it actually does to play the game. Yup. I will be the first one to point that out. Yes, I am probably not going to be able to get through explaining the whole game, showing you how the cards work, sequence of play, all these other things in 20 minutes. It's just not going to happen. So even though the game, once you have the hang of it, is probably only going to take you 20 minutes to play. I will point out that I have had this game for a while. And I'm going to go into more detail about this at the, when I do my kind of summary and my thoughts about Fort Sumter and give it my final review score. I've held off on it because I needed to play it a few more times, because the first couple of times when I played it, I couldn't understand what everybody was raving about. I mean, people were losing their minds over this game on the interwebs. I have played it a few more times, and I still don't understand why they're losing their minds over this game. Not saying it's a bad game. We're going to talk about that. But, I mean, there are people out there saying that this is the best game of 2018. That this is their favorite card-driven game, historical card-driven game. I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. But we're going to talk about it. Like I said, it's not a bad game. I just don't think it deserves the accolades that some people are giving it. All right, so we're going to kind of tour the board. So we got these areas. Players are going to have their final crisis cards, their token pool, and they'll have a hidden objective card every turn. They're going to be over here. So basically the layout here, as I mentioned, this is pretty abstracted. So we've got things broken up we've got 4 different important aspects or areas that both players are going to try to control, because the whole premise of this game is not that the Civil War does not start. The whole premise is which side actually finishes with kind of a leg up as the war is about to begin. So the Civil War is, a foregone conclusion. It's going to happen. So you're not playing to try to prevent the North and South, go to war with each other. It's just who's going to have a leg up at the end of, when shots are first fired on Fort Sumter in April of 1861. If I remember right, I think it's April 12th. I'm pretty up on my American Civil War history, so went and toured many of the battlefields when I was about 14. My dad and I went. Very, very cool. Really enjoyed that. All right, so anyway, you don't want to hear about my travels. So we've got, for an example, we've got secessionist spaces, and you'll notice that the board is nicely laid out where, you can read, if I'm on that side, I can read border states. Being on this side, I can read border states. So I thought that was nice. Some strange reason, this board strikes me as being kind of ugly. I don't know why. I do not know why this board is kind of ugly. I don't know if it's the color selection, which I understand to go with a color selection for people who are colorblind too. Completely understand that. I don't know. I do recall I saw a Mark Herman video at some point where he was kind of talking about, it was like a prototype that he had of Fort Sumter, and I gotta admit, that board looked better. It had like Texas was actually kind of the shape of Texas. I don't know. It's just, there's something about this. Like I said, I can't put my finger on it. And the funny thing is, my best friend Elliot Miller said the same thing. He said, hey, this is kind of ugly. I said, yeah, I know. I don't know what it is. But it's functional. Don't get me wrong. Everything's functional. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about this. All right, so anyway, so we've got 4 different areas that each of the players are going to try to control. We've got secessionist spaces right here. So we got border states, we got the Deep South, we got Texas. We've got political spaces, and that's Washington, Montgomery, and the northern state houses. We have armament spaces. So we have federal arsenals. We've got Fort Pickens, and we also have Fort Sumter, and then we also have public opinion. And we've got abolitionists, state assemblies, and newspapers. Interestingly enough, the northern, the Union player actually will have an advantage as far as public opinion with the newspapers, state assemblies, and abolitionists. Obviously enough, the secessionist player is going to have an advantage when it comes to secession spaces with border states, Deep South, and Texas. All right, as we continue the tour along, this is the victory point track here. It goes from 0 to 10. Both are going to start at 0. In case you get more than 10, you can always flip your little token over here with a plus 10. So I thought that was a nice thing. A nice little addition there. Plus, I thought it was cool that GMT actually included extra tokens here for not only the secessionists and the Union scoring, but we got an extra cube for each. We got an extra round track marker and an extra peace commissioner marker. So I thought that was pretty cool that they actually gave us all those extras. And GMT a lot of times will do that. They'll give you a spare just in case you might lose something. So that is the victory point tracker right here. We got a sequence of play. We've got the final crisis. We've got the victory point summary. Now, granted, the rules are very short. Very short, very easy to get into. They make sense. Didn't really have a whole lot of questions just reading through the rules of play. And then there's actually even a playbook, which if you've watched the Daily Dope, if you've ever read a review I've done for a GMT game, everybody should know I love the playbooks. The playbooks always give you a leg up on playing the game. A lot of times with GMT games, which are going to be kind of in depth. I mean, this is easy. This is easy to jump into. You don't need to read the playbook. But a lot of times I'll actually read the playbook first. I'll read the example of play to give me an idea. How do you actually play this game before I actually take a look at the rules? And I'm sure there are a lot of people who do that. So in the playbook, we get a very, very detailed example of play. It's about 15 pages. 14? Yeah, I think we want 14 pages on that. Then we get some history about what was going on. Then, of course, we get an explanation of what are these strategy cards. What do these represent? I always think that's kind of cool. And then designer notes, strategy tips, and 28 pages. So really, really like this. As I mentioned, it's not like I dislike this game. I actually do like this game. I like a lot of the stuff that GMT has done with this title, with Mark Herman's design. My thing is, I just don't think it's as revolutionary as people are saying. All right, so anyway, so we've got all this broken down. So you don't even really need to jump into the rule book because you've got just about everything right here. Then we've got the map legend, which is talking about the different areas on the board. You may notice that we have the federal arsenals, the border states, and Washington kind of have these like double white borders around them. That means that they are a pivotal space. That control of these spaces, and the newspapers, I should say, forgot the newspapers. Control of these spaces are important, are more important to that aspect of the crisis than other aspects. So, for an example, with newspapers, state assemblies, and the abolitionists, control of the newspapers is more important than control of the state assemblies or the abolitionists. All right, so then the final thing we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about kind of it's the crisis tracker over here, where we've got all of our political cubes. So, of course, gray is the secessionist and blue is the unionist. And what will happen here is you're going to actually be drawing these cubes from this area here as play goes on, because as I mentioned before, this is a card-driven game. And what you'll do is you're actually going to, it's area control. So you're going to have your different cubes on different areas that you are trying to gain control of. And as you play the strategy cards, you're going to unlock these cubes out of here. Now, the interesting thing is that sometimes you're penalized for actually being the first to move into escalating the crisis, where it's actually you're actually losing political capital because you're pushing the issue. Now, early on, it's good. Later on, it's not so good. So, also, victory points are very important because you don't get a ton of victory points. And the game plays very, very closely. Other thing I mentioned, should have mentioned on the map here on the board, we've got the round track. The game is played in 3 rounds. Then we go to the final crisis. Now, it is possible that you will actually move into the final crisis sooner as opposed to later. Does not happen too often, but the way that we trigger the final crisis is either we finish up a 3rd round, or both players have actually breached this center area here and started taking cubes off of that. And anytime you move into a new, higher level of tension in the crisis, that's what's considered breaching. And I'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. So effectively what we're going to do is you got a sequence of play. So each player is going to receive 4 strategy cards. Let's do it this way. I'll actually deal as if I'm really playing the game. So we also will receive 2 objective cards. And now I'll kind of talk about what each of these cards are. So let's take a look at we got the Union player. Anytime you're trying to determine who's going to go first, whoever has the most victory points goes first. If you're ever tied for victory points, when you're trying to determine who's going to go first, it'll be the Union player. Okay, so I'm going to hold this card up here. So a couple of things we're going to look at. And if you're familiar with card-driven games, there's a lot of stuff that this does, like most others. So the first thing you're going to notice is in the upper left corner is a number and there's a color. So if we see number 2, that means that play of this card will allow the player to place 2 of their political cubes from the track or from their token pool onto spaces. So that's the first thing that this tells us. The color gray shows that this is going to be a secessionist event. So you can always play it for the number up top, so either player can play that. But you can only play an event if it is for your faction, for your side. So as a Union player, I'm not going to be able to do anything with this card outside of using it for 2, or I can save this. Let's flip this upside down. I can save this for the final crisis, because like you'll see, and if you've played, say for an example, 1960, making a president, then you've got your event cards, but some of them you'll actually save for the debate round, and then after the debate round, you'll actually save cards once again for like extra pushes for taking certain states, for getting the electoral votes for certain states. Fort Sumter has a mechanic as well that you're going to save one of your cards each round to be able to utilize it during the final crisis. So, and it will not matter whose event is on that card during the final crisis. So we see here it's Southern senators resign, add up to 3 tokens to public opinion and or political spaces, or remove up to 2 political tokens from 1 political space. So we got Stephen A. Douglas. There's no A there. But shows, okay, so that's 1. Or it is a union event. We could add up to 3 tokens to secession or political spaces. And then that's going to count for public opinion. We got Mississippi secedes. And then we've got Frederick Douglass. So we got both Douglasses going here. So as a union player, I could play this to add up to 3 tokens and public opinion a public opinion space. So that's what we've got. So we've got a couple of unionist events, and we've got a couple of secessionist events. And then you would actually look at your objectives. So these are hidden objectives. You're going to get 2 cards, you're going to keep 1, and you're going to put one of them back into the objective deck. So we'd be looking at here, it says newspapers, objective. If you played this card and controlled a newspaper space, you may remove up to 2 tokens from any 1 space. Then we've got Washington. If you played this card and controlled the Washington space, you may remove up to 2 tokens from political or public opinion spaces. So knowing that we actually have an opportunity to work with public opinion, probably going to want to keep that card. So we're going to say, all right, I know I shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to put this over here. Which, my mug's not cutting it off. We're cool. So that would be the hidden objective. These are the strategy cards. This objective card would go back into here, and we kind of shuffle this on up. There we go. See what the secessionist players got. Gustavus Fox. Well, that's a union event, but it is a 2. Now we see there's a 3, but it's showing blue and gray. So this is an event that could be used by either player. Very similar to other card-driven games. So we've got social elites. Move up to 4 of your tokens from any public opinion or political spaces to your token pool. We've got the Republican Party. So it looks as if the Secession player has all union events except for the dual social elites. One thing I will point out, I think there's 40 strategy cards here. And you're actually each side is gonna play 3 strategy cards each round for 3 rounds. Plus you'll have 3 Final Crisis cards. So you'll have 3 event cards you've saved for the Final Crisis. So in reality, that means each game you're gonna have 24 events out of 40. So there are gonna be events that are not ever gonna be triggered in this game. Plus, for an example here, the Secession player, not looking too hot here because they only have 1 dual event. The other are all unionist events. So this is a card-driven game where, like Twilight Struggle, right? So if you're playing Twilight Struggle and you'd be like, okay, well, I'm playing this for the points, but it's my opponent's event, well, then that event will trigger. That is normally the case. If you were playing, say, 1960, and you play a card, but it's your opponent's event, your opponent can spend their tokens to trigger that event. In this game, no. It's just that gets played for the 2 points. This event will not trigger because it's not being played by a unionist player. So knowing that, well, we've got some numbers we can work with as the secessionist player. What do we got as far as our objectives? So we've got Fort Pickens and we've got Fort Sumter. Well, that's interesting, both forts. Well, Fort Sumter actually does count at the end of the game as an additional victory point if whoever controls it. So it might make some sense. Well, maybe we'll hang on to that Fort Sumter objective and make that our hidden objective. And it would just go back into here. All right, so let's play a little bit. So we've got the unionist, right? So we got the union player. Union player says, okay, I'm going to play Frederick Douglass. Says, well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up to 3 tokens in 1 public opinion space. So what they'll do here is they actually will take from their track here. So it goes from 15 and then it counts down. So you're going to take 1, 2, going to take, whoops, from this side here, 3. So they decide, okay, I'm going to put 3 in newspapers because it told us we could put it into 1 public opinion space. So, bang, that's it. This gets discarded. That is the Union player's turn. All right, so then we'll have, okay, so let's see. All right, so the Secession player says, okay, let's get those over there for the Union player. Says, all right, so I'm going to play this for 2. They're going to take their 2 cubes here and say, all right, so I'm using 2. I can place 2 cubes. Now, effectively, they can place them any place they want. So they say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go Fort Sumter and I'm going to go border states. All right, so that was it. Their card gets discarded. Then we go back to the Union player. Union player says, oh, okay, well, let's see. I'll play that for 2, and I'm going to take the next 2 cubes off here, and I'm going to place 1 in federal arsenals, and I think I'm going to go to abolitionists. Because one of the things you got to keep in mind is when you finish up a round, you're going to score victory points. So the whole premise is you're trying to control the 3 areas of that particular issue or aspect, right? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to control all 4 of the armament spaces. Or I should say 3. Why did I say 4? There's 4 different areas. You're trying to control all 3 of the political areas. So that's one of the things that you're trying to do during the game. All right, so use that. There's the 2 that gets discarded. Then we go back over to the Secession player. Secession player says, okay, I'm going to play the 2. I'm going to take 2 more. Oops. I always remove these in the wrong order. I'm going to go Texas, Deep South. See, one of the things with the events will tell you where you need to put your political cubes, where if you just play it for the number, you're able to place them wherever you want. All right, so that gets discarded. Then we're down to the last 2. Now, one thing that the Unionist player had is the Unionist player had a bunch of public opinion cards. So they figured, okay, well, they're going to save one of the public opinion cards for the final crisis. So what they're going to do is they decide, okay, I'm going to save this. It's a Secession card anyway. I'm going to put that down there in my final crisis cards. I say, okay, I'm going to play Stephen Douglas. And it says add up to 3 tokens to secession or political spaces. So he's going to take his 3 off. And when he takes the 3, when he breaches this, so now he has breached this level of the crisis, there are bonus cubes. There are bonus cubes. These bonus cubes, when you get them, they go into your token pool. So they go into there. So these political capital cubes, when you have more than the other player at the end of the game, it could earn you victory points as well. So the Unionist player has breached this, so they're going to get those 2 bonus cubes, but they had the 3. And they could add up to 3 tokens to secession or political spaces. So they decide, okay, well, I might as well do this because the secessionist player already is controlling the secession spaces. Why throw away the 3 influence when they could go and try to get the government. So that's probably what they're thinking when they make that play. Now, granted, I'm just kind of showing you how to play this game. I'm not exactly thinking out each of these moves. So I just got to give you an idea as I'm racing through this. All right, so then we've got these 2 here. So we've got 3 and we've got 2. Let's say, all right, well, the secessionist player decides, okay, I'm going to keep that public opinion for the final crisis, and they're going to just play it. Oh, wait, they had the social elites. Whoops. Where was the one that they had before? So the Republican Party they should have played? I don't know. Because they played the social elites. I don't know why it's still sitting there. We'll say it's this. We'll say it's a 2. So boom, 1, 2. They get the 2. So they have breached this light green area, this like lime green area. So once it's been breached, they're going to move that and get those bonus tokens there. So they're going to get 2. They can place them anywhere, and they decide, okay, well, I'm going to mess with the Union player. I don't want it. I want to make sure that I kind of try to kind of screw them over. So I'm going to go to Montgomery, and then I am going to go to right there. So, all right, so that would be the final card that's played. So that gets discarded. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go into your scoring for victory points as well as your objective cards. So, what you're going to do here is you're going to look at the pivotal spaces. So you're going to look at the pivotal spaces. Who controls the pivotal spaces? Now, once again, we are still tied at 0 victory points. So the Union player is going to get to go first. Union player says, okay, so I control newspapers. I control federal arsenals. So I'm going to get to go first. And what you can do is you can move or remove 2 tokens from these areas, the public opinion areas, right? So, okay, so you say, yeah, all right. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to remove one of the secession tokens. That goes back into their pool. It's not eliminated. It goes back to the pool. So they don't actually lose that. Then that was removing 1, they're going to move 1. So boom, they're going to do that. All right, so we've got that. Then we next look at, okay, so we've got the secession player controls the border states. So they got the border states here. They could conceivably move or remove, but they're not going to do that because, and it has to be from these areas, that they would do the removing 2. So you're looking at, okay, so, well, I'm going to leave it the way it is because the secession player is going to get a victory point for having control of all 3 of these. So they say, okay, well, done with that. Not doing anything there. Next, we're going to look at, okay, federal arsenals. Well, the Union player owns that, but they only have the 1 on there. Now, what they can do is say, okay, well, I can remove this one, so they'll remove that. Then we're going to take a look at last one is the political. So Union player controls Washington, so they can basically remove that out. So once you've done that, now you're going to take a look and you're going to score victory points for each crisis dimension, each area here of the crisis. So first off, let's look at secessionist. Well, control all 3. Boom, that's a victory point for the secessionist player. Political, that's the Union. So now they're tied again. Go to public opinion. Well, amazingly enough, Union controls that. And the armament spaces, no one controls all 3, so no victory point is awarded for that. Then you're going to flip over. You're going to look at your hidden objectives. So, once again, The Union player has the most victory points. They're going to go first. Oops. What is it? No, that was their event card. This is their objective card. Sorry. So it says newspapers. If you play this card and control the newspaper space, you may remove up to 2 tokens from any one space. Any one space. So, Union player decides, okay, so I'm going to take him out of the border states. I'm going to take him out of that critical area right there. So, that was it. They're able to do that. Now we go to the secessionist player. It says, if you played this card and control the Fort Sumter space, you may... Well, nope, they're not in Fort Sumter anymore. They were removed from it, so they're not able to do anything with this hidden objective. These get discarded, and that's the end of the first round. So as you'll continue to play, you're going to continue unleashing more and more of these political cubes, and you'll see, it's upside down. Let me go. Let's do it from this one here. Let's say at some point, the secessionist player gets to, they breach this area here. So whoever breaches this area first is going to get 3 bonus cubes to add to their pool. Now, when you spend cubes, you always take it from the pool first. So right now, the secession player's got a bunch of these cubes that they could be utilizing. I'll put them up here. From their pool, and not actually taking them from the track here and ratcheting up the tensions. But once this area gets breached here, the player who first breaches that is going to get the bonus cubes, and the player who did not is actually going to get the Peace Commissioner. Now, a lot of times, there are event cards that move this Peace Commissioner around. Sometimes the Peace Commissioner might come into play earlier than this point. Sometimes it does not. So, but the Peace Commissioner always works the same exact way. The Peace Commissioner, whoever gets the Peace Commissioner, gets to place them in an area and, say for an example, like that, put them in Washington. What the Peace Commissioner means is that as long as that little meeple is sitting in that area, no one can either put cubes in or take cubes out. Now, throughout the game, the Peace Commissioner can move around on the board, going to different areas. That does happen. I've seen times where the Commissioner just sits there until the end. So, once the players have either completed the 3 rounds, so it's basically Lincoln gets elected, Buchanan is a lame duck, the Lincoln and Davis are both elected as far as their respective presidents, then you move into the final crisis. That's when, okay, what's going to happen now? So what eventually will take place, let's grab some of these, throw those down there, is each of the players will have hung on to 3 final crisis cards. So you're going to go through your usual scoring. Then what you're going to do is when you move into the final crisis, you're going to remove the Peace Commissioner. The Peace Commissioner is no longer around. And then you're going to go and you're going to actually, you can put these in any sort of order you want. And all you care about now is this bottom section, right? Secession, public opinion. A lot of times what you'll do, and of course, as the game kind of evolves, as you're playing and you see, okay, well, I kind of have the feeling that my opponent is trying to control these dimensions, these areas. I'm trying to control these other areas. You can kind of start putting cards to the side as far as where is your focus kind of going to be. But the interesting thing is, most of the time, you're either going to just select one area and take like all 3 of the cards, or you might decide you'll have one of each. So you may have a armaments, you may have a public opinion, you may have a secession. So that's basically what you'll do. You're going to put these in the order you want them to be in. And each of the players, I just kind of threw these together randomly. Each of the players are going to reveal their final crisis cards one at a time. So we're going to take a look here. So we've got secession for the secession player. We've got armaments for the Union player. So if they matched, and it's kind of funny because it says right here, the strategy colors match each player starting with the first player. Remember, the first player is the person who's got the most victory points. Removes 1 cube from a space that matches the strategy card, or removes 2 cubes from any combination of spaces. Well, it doesn't match, so it's going to tell us if the strategy card colors do not match, each player, starting with the first player, can move 2 tokens from any space on the map and or from their token pool into 1 or 2 spaces that match their final crisis card color. So, as an example here, we've got the first player, and of course we would have way more cubes out here on the board, more than likely. So the Union player had armaments, so if they don't match, the player would then be able to go and say, okay, well, I can take tokens from my pool, because you're no longer playing cards. So if there's leftover cubes over here, they are not going to come into play, only your pool. So you can say, okay, well, I can take 2 cubes and actually put them into armaments. So I'll do that. Then got the secession player. They're going to say, okay, well, I can move 2 cubes. Well, I'm not going to move 2 cubes. I'm just going to add 2 cubes to secession areas. There you go. Done. Move on to the next strategy card. You would reveal public opinion, armaments once again. Same exact thing. So because they don't match, you're actually really getting an option to add your cubes. Whereas if they do match, then the player who's in front has an opportunity to kind of get rid of cubes. So eventually what's going to take place is you're going to go through your 3 rounds. On each of the rounds, you're going to score your victory points from the areas that are controlled, the dimensions that are controlled. You're also going to score victory points sometimes from objective cards. So you've got that. And then when you get to the final crisis, you're going to look at a few different, there's some tiebreakers as well. So you get the victory points for, during the rounds, you get the victory points for controlling the dimensions as well as the objective cards. Then at the end, you score for every dimension that you control, every area you control. It's a second round of scoring, and because you're playing the crisis cards that could move these cubes around, so you're going to once again score the crisis dimensions, the areas of the crisis, and you're going to get a victory point for whoever controls Fort Sumter. And if you have 3 or more political tokens left at the end of the game, after you've played your final crisis cards, that is worth an additional victory point. So, and of course, there are some tiebreakers in that, but a lot of times, for the most part, the tiebreaker kind of swings towards the Union. So, and that's basically how you would play Fort Sumter. Once you get the hang of it, it takes about 20 minutes. You can crank through it pretty quickly. Sometimes it all depends on, what event cards are coming up, the strategy cards that you get, as far as sometimes how long the game is going to play out. Because sometimes you'll see where it's, like for an example, in that first round, I had the secession player only had one event that actually they could use the event part from. Everything else was just the numbers. And that can kind of speed up play, too, because you're not putting as much out there. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, so as far as Fort Sumter, the Secession Crisis, 1860, 1861. There's a lot of stuff I like about it. I like the fact that, you play it real quick. It takes a few minutes to set up, not a ton of time. The thing that takes the longest is just putting all the little political cubes on their little track. But quick setup, plays pretty quickly. Even the first time that Cameron and I played it, it took us about 25 minutes, maybe about 30 minutes. I will mention that the first few times you play the game, you got to play it a few times to understand what the hell's going on, really. I mean, that's how I got to kind of sum it up. Some of the aspects of the design are not made apparent unless you play the game a few times. It kind of unlocks some of the things that are going on, because first off, I mean, when you first start playing the game, you don't realize that the Union player, their events, they do have more stuff that's aimed at the public opinion because they controlled the majority of newspapers. Plus, there were, more newspaper readers up north, because what's basically going on in this game is you're kind of vying for position with kind of the people who are sort of undecided about what side of this conflict they're going to fall onto, right? Are they going to support the Union, or, is it about states' rights? Not that it was ever really about states' rights, let's be honest here. So I thought that was kind of cool how when you play it, you kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that before. I think it's a cool design. I just don't think it's fantastic. And I'm going to kind of get into the reasoning behind that, because now I've heard folks talking about how, well, yeah, it's like Twilight Struggle, or, well, yeah, it's like For the People, or it's like Washington's War. Funny thing is, I haven't heard anybody talking about, well, it's kind of like 1960 with you saving the cards for the end. I haven't heard that. But the thing is, it's not anything like Washington's War. It's not anything like For the People. I think somebody wrote something, because I usually don't look at what other people think of games, but I was kind of like, wow, that's it. As far as Fort Sumter, we played it a couple times. Cameron and I played it, and the first time we played it, I was like, really, that's all? And he said, yeah. I'm kind of surprised, because Cameron really likes 1960, and I've actually gotten him into playing Twilight Struggle. Busted it out with Elliot Miller, my best friend, over at voiceofe.com, although he's really not doing anything at Voice of E anymore. We played it 3 times, and his reaction was kind of the same thing. That's it? That's all that's to this game? So I was like, am I, because I was kind of thinking the same thing. I like it. I don't think it's bad, but it's certainly not epic. And I think that's what Elliot and I probably especially were thinking is, yeah, it's a quick game, but it should have like this big, like, epic feel to it. And it doesn't. And that's one of the reasons why people are saying, oh, it's like Twilight Struggle, it's like For the People. No, it's not. Twilight Struggle, For the People, Washington's War, those tell kind of like epic stories. You sit down, you play it, and it's like, wow. Now, granted, yes, I understand. These games do take much longer to play. That's why I'm not even mentioning Empire of the Sun, because Empire of the Sun takes a lot of time to play. But it's like those games because it's card driven. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's not, I don't want to use that term. It's the filler game, even though I believe that's actually how it's being marketed, is as a filler game. But it's not a game that if I had like a half hour to play a game, and I'm a big history buff, I love history. I got to be honest, I'm not reaching for Fort Sumter. I'm not, even with just 2 people playing, I'm not going to be reaching for Fort Sumter. I'm probably going to reach for like a Tiny Epic game, maybe Tiny Epic Galaxies, if I only have maybe a half hour to play a game, and we know how to play both Fort Sumter as well as one of the Tiny Epic games, I'm going with that. I don't understand some folks out there saying, "Oh, this is the game, the best game of 2018." Not in my opinion. Like I said, it's not bad. It's fun. I enjoyed it. It's not just something that really doesn't spark my imagination. It's sort of, I kind of play, like I mentioned, the board's kind of ugly in my opinion. The cards are serviceable, but they're not like jumping out. Nothing's popping at you on those. They look like your typical kind of, card-driven game kind of card. No flash, anything like that. I mean, for an example, 1960, their cards are much more attractive, have much more visual pop than the cards from Fort Sumter. But, I'm not holding it against the game, especially since it's a $42 game, and of course you can get it for quite a bit cheaper than that online. So when I boil it all down to my score, I give Fort Sumter a 7.5. Almost went 7. It's a little better than a 7. 7.5 out of 10, which means it's a good game. People will enjoy it, but it's not phenomenal. It is not reinventing the wheel, or it's not the greatest thing since sliced bread or anything like that. I'm sure Mark Herman himself will just say, "Hey, you know what? I don't want to use the term throwaway design, because it's not a throwaway design, but it's certainly something where it's like, yeah, it's fun." I'm sure Mark Herman himself isn't sitting there going, "Wow, this is my greatest design ever." So anyway, that is it for today's show. And I'm sure some people are going to be ticked off about my final thoughts on Fort Sumter. But like I said, I don't understand. That's why I held off so long, because I'm like, have I not played this enough times to like unlock the magic of this design? And no, that wasn't the case. It's good. It's just not great, and it's certainly not phenomenal. It's not the game of the year. I will actually have a game of the year rundown this year. I didn't do it last year, but I think I'm going to do it this year. I think I'll take 5 games that I really, really dig and do a game of the year. So, all right, that is it for today's show. As I mentioned, on tomorrow's show, I am going to take a look at and review Tales from the Loop, Our Friends the Machines, and Other Mysteries from Free League. And I always like to mention, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel here at YouTube, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. You know the drill by now. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. I'll be back tomorrow, although, because I have the cardiologist appointment, not sure what time the show will be on. I will tweet if it's the regular time or if it's later. But I always also like to say thank you very much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.